Okay, so video 5. I went back into sampling from artists' work and I chose these two artists specifically because from the previous work I kind of gathered that layering was a good way of building up emotion and building up different types of emotion within the work. So these artists here, they generally work quite messy, they're quite layered upon, they work, and it's just this perspective on paintings and his emotions. They're quite neat, they're quite ordered, but then they're also quite messy and they're quite a lot of different emotions obviously going through. And then I recreated this again using the different colours, scraping into the paint to get that more of an angry emotion and the depth with the colours popping through underneath as well. I do quite like that. And then here, this artist is Wendy McWilliams. There's a nice little quote here, she creates one-of-a-kind paintings and every single one contains a piece of her world and life experience. As much as we'd love to be happy and skipping through life at all times, there will always be moments that get us down, we get stressed, we get overwhelmed, and she shows this within her paintings. So I wanted to recreate this again. I wanted to show the colours from underneath. I do really like her work because she uses the pinks and the purples and the oranges, but she's able to add in the emotion and the anger by the mixing and the layering of the work. As well, she uses crayons on top to get the depth, get the harsh lines on top, as well as digging into the paint again, removing the paint and adding the emotion with layers and with texture. So they were two artists that I did really like to look at. And from that I did go on to create some of my own, just using different types of paint. So there's acrylic, there's watercolours in there, and as well adding on the pencil crayons and the pen and the dragging and the different textures that I created using the Richard Serra as well. So there is quite a few that I like here. With this one especially, I popped the white paint on top, and this was quite heavy duty white paint, so it's blocked out the underneath. You can barely see it underneath, and I do quite like that. It's as if everything's happening, then there's just this white that's covered, and the red that's coming through and the emotions underneath. They're not as bold because the red's on top, but you can see it, you can see the emotion there, you can see the thickness and the jagged lines. And this one could represent confusion, it could represent lots of different emotions, the building up, the anxiety with all the stress and everything that's happening. It could be represented in that term. And yeah, so this one I really quite liked, as it was simplistic in the fact that I only used 3 colours, and I stuck to them 3 colours throughout. So I even used the same pencil crayons with those 3 colours and merged them together, again scraping into the paint to create that texture and the damaged and weathered quite look. I did try it just using pens and watercolours. Didn't work as well. The pens did stick in the paper, so they didn't bleed, and then the paints do kind of look quite subtle, but it's again the watercolours, they look soft. You can't really get the anger and the emotion and the sharpness of the lines, which is sometimes needed through when using watercolours, I find. You can get the softness if you are wanting that, and the subtleness as a backdrop maybe, but I don't like the effect as much. I like the sharpness and the texture that comes from the acrylic and the watercolours. I then went on to find this artist, and Liz, what is her name? She's called Lou, and she works with texture. So in the same way, she's kind of layering up different materials, different paints to get the texture within a work. she's adding paper and scrumpled up newspaper to her work, bits of old wallpaper again to make the weathered look, the worn look, and the more layered, the more emotional look that she's trying to go for when creating these pieces. I did try and replicate some of these just by using the building up the layers, the newspaper, the crinkles within the newspaper. I used some net there as well to see what effect that would give, and I really like the effect these gives off. As well, I didn't go overboard with the colours because I wanted it to focus on the texture that was coming through on the paper, so I've used quite subtle mixture, the red, the blue, the green, and mixed them with white to make them quite subtle. And I do think this gives off a really nice effect. It's the texture that's the main focus, and it's the colours, and it's kind of the backdrop or the effect that it gives within the page. So yeah, I do quite like them ones, and I feel like it relates to my project because it's everyday stuff. So it's everyday newspapers, it's wallpaper, it's stuff that you'd see every day, and I could even, if I was to create these on a larger scale, I could go around and collect bits of newspaper containing articles on issues and mental health issues, or use wallpaper that's damaged and that's tearing off the wall to represent the damage a mental health issue could do to a person. So yeah, I do quite like them ones. So we were given the opportunity to show our work in a exhibition space. So this was a shop, and it gave me the opportunity to go around the general public and ask about the marks they might be feeling, or emotions that they might be feeling, and what marks they represent with different emotions, like I've done previously. But this time I wanted to specifically base it around what that person was feeling at that specific time. So I pinned up a large piece of paper, and it was quite large, and it just asked people, fill out, make a mark of what you feel right now. So we got a very wide variety of different marks, and give them a selection of colours to pick from as well. And peaceful here, tired, creative. Here's just a couple that I cut out of the sheet. So yeah, that was a really good opportunity, and it gave me the chance to view a larger audience of marks rather than just the small sample size I did at the beginning. It also gave me the chance to think about what society needs when looking at suicide. So it needs, and the stigma around suicide and mental health issues, so it needs more coverage, but it also needs to be targeted at a large range of people, because the amount of different ages that came through the door when I was doing this piece, it was everybody, and they could all be have mental health issues, or be feeling sad and need help, and it can't just be focusing one age group or age bracket, as it's a subject that covers the whole of the age ranges. So yeah, as well as this, I was from this I kind of used the marks that were seen on the walls and duplicated them, see how I could make these marks specifically into a piece. So I used the mirror to start with, and then just duplicated them, and I did like the effect this gives, especially with the ones that overlapped. So we had a bit of green, envy, and then anger overlapping, and then it just kind of built up, as well as a bit of stress and creativity. From this I downloaded an app onto my phone, and then this duplicates the whole thing entirely. So this was the whole piece together, duplicated over and over and over again, and I do really like the effect that it gives. I feel like it's a good way to represent one or two or a couple of marks, as it'll target those marks and it'll be specific, but I don't feel like it's a good way to represent the emotion or the mental health, as it's just focusing on that one section. But yeah, so I do like the effect, and I do really like how it worked out. And again, I feel like I can use these marks and the lines that are made and that I gathered throughout. So yeah. Also, while in the shop, I had the chance to create textures. So looking back at Richard Serra, he obviously had the verb list, and I wanted to go back to him and focus specifically on to crease or to crumple. And I wanted to do this, and I used paper, and at the same time people were creating their marks, I gave them a piece of paper and just says, describe how you're feeling with that piece of paper. So some crumpled it up into a ball of anger, and the creases can be seen, and it does represent how emotions can cover a wide range or affect the whole thing. And then others were shy and then just covered it over, or conformed as they were going to work or whatever, or trapped in the system. And this one was just continuous, like a fan. But I feel like this was a good way to put texture into the work and not have it just be bits of texture or random bits. So yeah.